Padres Hot Tub, everybody. Craig Elsten, Raphie Cantor. No Chris Reed this evening. Chris offers his regrets. He has been suffering through a stomach bug that's got him laid out. He was able to limp in to do banter with us for our Patreon patrons. Couldn't make it for the big show today. We hope the big man is ready to go on next week's episode when we get back to a Sunday recording. Doing this today on a Wednesday, January 31st, because I was sick too on Monday. We were 2/3 absence. We could not create a quorum for Padres Hot Tub, so therefore we could not record. But now, with a quorum, we are able to proceed. Raphie, how are you, my friend?
I'm all right. I'm also sad that Chris is not here. There's a very big absence, both on my screen and in our ears right now. I am excited though because there are signs of life coming from 19 Tony Gwynn Drive. We don't have to bullshit our way through Padres Hot Tub. We can talk about real things that the team is doing. So I'm excited to do that with you, Craig.
I am excited as well. We can shelve our best of the 2000s war.
Which is kind of an oxymoron if you think about it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Best of winning the division going 82-80. Like,
oh my God. Did I ever tell you the time I really put my foot in my mouth with that?
No.
There was a lot of cynicism. So, Ben and I did the pregame, postgame on Kogo from 2000 to 2003, right? And then 2004, the rights went over to Mighty 1090, but I was still working for Kogo. I worked for the next 5 years after that for Kogo. And they would send us to the ballpark to do reports during the game on their evening news updates and whatnot, to gather sound for the morning show. So I was in the press box, not covering the team. I mean, covering them, but not on the team, so to speak, on the broadcast crew when the team was finally good, right? 2004, finally winning season after I'd gone through back-to-back 98 loss seasons. And then 2005, here they are, and there's this weird, staggery group that was losing, and they clinched the NL West with a losing record. And I remember I was in the, game ends, and everyone gets in the elevator to go down from the press box, and up there is, of course, also the GM suite and whatnot. And KT got in the elevator with us, and as we're going down, he's, hey, congrats, yeah, NL West champs. I'm like, well, now you better get a winning record. And he just kind of looked at me and was just like, and I just thought to myself, what a fucking asshole I am. Like, he just won the NL West. Who gives a shit what the record is? He just won the NL West. And I'm like, no, you better not losing record. Like, what an asshole. So, anyways, I was a total dick that night.
And look at you now. Now you're on the flagship. So clearly,
right. I think if I remember right, they either won 4 in a row or 4 out of 5 at the end to get to 82-80.
Uh-huh.
And then they lost 3 in a row in the playoffs, and so they were 82-83, as far as I was concerned. But anyhow, quick housekeeping. Again, Chris not here, but he'll be back. Best way to support this show, as always, patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. We've been seeing patrons start to come back after drifting away for the winter, so we thank you. If you're somebody listening on the free feed who fits that category, come on back now, you hear? We're getting back toward getting ever so closer to the regular season, where we'll start to have, once again, our regular weekly group therapy sessions that we record live on our Discord stage, where our patrons can call in, check in, chime in, offer their comments, etc. All of our patron-only podcasts, banter is there all the time, Have a Drink coming back. So check it out. Plenty of great benefits. It starts as low as $5 a month at patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. Also, just in case you didn't notice or you forgot or you didn't know to begin with, I'm on the radio now every single day, Monday through Friday, on the Padres flagship 97.3 The Fan, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Annie and Elsten with myself and Annie Heilbrunn. You probably know that. It's a gentle reminder. I'd particularly like it if you tuned in on Thursday and Friday for reasons, but I'd particularly like it if you tuned in on Thursday and Friday this week and maybe kept every possible browser or radio or anything that can attune, smart speaker, phone app, anything to the old show. I would certainly appreciate that as well. And that wraps up housekeeping. hey, Raphie, we signed a player.
What? We're allowed to do that?
I thought maybe not. I mean, I start this damn show on January 4th. I think they signed Usako on like the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
And now, almost a month later, another reliever. But a major league reliever for the first time this offseason. We've been signing folks from other leagues overseas now. Wandy Peralta, left-hander, formerly bounced around Cincinnati, San Francisco. Then he went to the Yankees and spent the last 2.5 seasons with the Yankees and put up a sub-3 ERA each of those 3 years. He's had walk rate issues. His FIPs haven't matched his ERA except for 1 year where he had a good FIP. The other times the FIPs have been high. But he does some pretty good things, Rafe. We can break him down. And this is an AJ special, a 4-year contract. It's 4 1-year contracts for Wandy Peralta. It's the Lugo Martinez deal on steroids, as Wandy has 3 options in a 4-year deal, but the total apparently will pencil out to $16.5 million. I was a lot more excited about this signing than I thought I would be. How about you?
I think I'm going to provide a little bit more of a tepid reaction to counter that. I do think that there is value in having a competent left-handed relief pitcher, and you know we'll get into that in a second. It's something I talked about on Pods of Replacement a couple weeks back with John Prokota. That's another person who I think is also I would say he's a little bit more down on this deal than I am. But I do think that Wandy presents a really interesting case study. He's almost like a Rorschach test in terms of like how you feel about the team and kind of also how you look at baseball, because he is someone who you can point to, hey, he had a 2.83 ERA last year. Padres just signed a lefty with a sub-3 ERA. Oh, that's great. Or you can kind of look at the glass half empty and say, hey, this guy walked more guys than Blake Snell on a rate basis last year. And Blake Snell walked a lot of guys last year. And, and he also was, playing in Yankee Stadium, which is, traditionally hitter-friendly ballpark. So, you can kind of look at him and see different things. We'll get into that into a second, but I do want to hear, like, give me your kind of optimistic, like, why are you excited about this deal?
I'm excited about this deal because, and again, we can dive into the metrics and stuff. Yeah, he walked some guys. Peralta does some things that the Padres need in their bullpen. He throws hard. He was, I think, 86th percentile last year in velo. He was 96% or 94th percentile in ground ball rate. And in particular, that excites me because, yeah, he's walked some guys, but if you have Machado and Kim and Bogarts and Cronenworth to catch the ball on the ground, you've got some good opportunities for double plays to come. I was very concerned about, in this division especially, having your 2 left-handed relievers be a kid fresh over from Japan. You have no idea what his performance level is going to be. You can guess, but you don't really know. And Tom Cosgrove, who I don't think you can really know what his performance level is going to be. He pitched, maybe 30 innings last year, first time out, funky delivery, hard for people to scout right away. Everyone's going to have a year's book on him now. And I was kind of worried that 2 lefty relievers could drop to a half effective lefty reliever in pretty quick measure. Now, if you believe Wandy Peralta is going to be bad for the Padres, then, maybe you feel the exact same way. But to me, this gives Mike Shildt optionality in the bullpen. And when we're looking at a starting rotation that's got 2 guys who you count on, both of whom have injury risks, a third guy who you're intrigued by, who definitely has injury risks, and then the 4-5 spot currently looking like a couple of piggyback spots or flyers or Waldron Cauldrons, etc. The idea of having 3 attack left-handers in a bullpen, a chance for maybe Shohei and Freeman to see a righty 1 time in a game and then start flipping out and being, here's one lefty, here's another lefty, here's another lefty. That's a way to beat a good team in a tough game. And if you're not going to have great front-end options, I like building your pitching staff up from the back.
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate what I spoke with John with on Pods Web Replacement a few weeks ago about the value of left-handed pitching in the bullpen. I recommend you go listen to the whole episode. John has a very smart explanation about how we should be, kind of balancing our rotation and bullpen and kind of taking some inspiration from the Tampa Bay Rays and the way that they manage it. But I'll reiterate what I said, which is for all of you who want us to sign a starter who is a left-handed pitcher because our starting rotation's theoretically all righties right now, I'm here to tell you that doesn't really matter. Last year, starters in Major League Baseball across the whole league, so this is a massive sample size, lefties actually fared worse than righties slightly. Righties had a 4.44 ERA, lefties had a 4.48 ERA. That is not the case when it comes to relief pitchers, though. Not the case at all. Righties had a 4.27 ERA last year across the league. Lefties had a 3.89 ERA across the league. Massive difference when you're talking about a sample size that's that big. And I think this is even more important. You brought up Shohei Ohtani. You brought up Freddie Freeman. Obviously two very powerful left-handed hitters. Left-handed hitters in inning 6 or later in the game, the splits are massively different in terms of what handedness the pitchers have. So left-handed hitters against right-handed pitchers in inning 6 or later, 4.35 ERA for those pitchers. Left-handed hitters against left-handed pitchers in inning 6 or later, 3.55 ERA, almost a whole run different. So as you get later into the games, it is massively, massively important to have lefties at your disposal to take on those lefties. And I think, personally, I feel a lot more confident in a grouping of Matsui, Cosgrove, and Peralta than I do in a grouping of Matsui, Cosgrove, and Morahone, who may or may not be available at all this year, depending on injury health, as he is every year. So just in terms of like moving folks down the bench, that is definitely one in the plus column for this signing.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at too. And if you have a really solid bullpen, and look, I think your guys' par was just a killer episode. It was really prescient in terms of where the team is right now. And thinking about John Percota's conveyor belt theory of a way that you can fight through and build a pitching staff out of the clay that we've got right now in this organization, adding another quality left-hander really helps me see the plan clarify to some extent, where now that conveyor belt could really take place. Because I did this on the show this morning, Raphie, but going to be an 8-man bullpen, right? 13-person pitching staff. You're going to have 5 starters. And we already know Musgrove, Darvish, King, 4 and 5 are wide open. Let's just pencil in Brito and Waldron, right? As our 4-5 right now, if things open today. Well, now you've got Cosgrove, Matsui, Peralta. You can say Suarez, Wilson, De Los Santos. Those are 6 attack relievers in your bullpen. Now, let's say you go Morahone, those are those 2 bulk relievers that could piggyback off your 4-5 guys, give you 2 or 3 innings in those situations. And those are also the spots where, as John was talking about, somebody who had to throw 15 innings in a month, right? Well, if Morahone throws 15 innings in a month, he'll probably be injured. Well, now you've got a kid like Jacob, who supposedly is healthy and looking really good and funky again. Well, that's somebody that could slot in as the year goes along. All of these young arms that are coming up through the system, those are guys who could find their way into the bullpen as the year goes along. So I think it's not foolproof, obviously. There's an incredible injury risk to where the Padres are right now, where they pretty much can't afford a major injury at all to their staff. But as currently constituted, if they had great injury health and great luck on the injury front, for the first time, I could actually see a viable pitching staff with what we have.
Yeah. I am going to kind of bring the mood down just a little bit here. Just because I do want to point out that Wandy Peralta is a career replacement level pitcher. Like, just straight up. This kind of comes down to your philosophies in terms of, do you value B WAR or F WAR a little bit more? I'm an F WAR person. and F-WAR uses FIP to calculate their, pitching WAR. And as you mentioned, Wandy, not a guy who has who has good FIPS. He has high FIPS. FIP is calculated solely by using home runs, strikeouts, and walks, because those are the only things that pitchers can control theoretically. Anytime the ball goes into play, via con Dios sort of thing. Like, you could have bad fielders, you could have this. So FIP is a stat that looks to say, like, hey, what are the only things in the game that the pitcher can control? Let's only use those to analyze it, because that way we're taking kind of the luck that comes with like baseball's randomness out of it. And purely based on FIP, Wandy's a guy who doesn't strike out a lot of dudes compared to the league average. He's slightly below league average in terms of strikeouts per nine. He lets a little bit more home runs than league average. He had a 1.17 last year. League average for relievers was 1.09. And this is the big one, he walks a ton more guys. He walked 5 guys per 9 last year. Again, that's just slightly more than Blake Snell. League average for relievers is 3.69. And this is a thing that, like, he's walked a lot of guys like throughout his entire career. He's I'm struggling to pull up his career rate right now, but I'm just going to kind of fast forward to his projections. Because again, we're paying this guy $16 million over 4 years. And this is where the AJ Preller side of the deal irks me. Like, I understand why, as Wandy Peralta, I'm taking this deal. Like, I am someone who I know, if I want, I will have $16 million coming to me over the next 4 years. That's great. But if I have a great year this year and I'm 32 years old after, they're going to be 33 next year, like, I could opt out and I could sign a better deal. And so basically, like, this puts in the position where the Padres are taking on all of the risk, and they won't, the reward that they will get will only be 1 year. And so this was the case when we signed Nick Martinez to this deal. This was the case when we signed Michael Wacha to this deal. I think the thing about the Wacha versus the Peralta of it all is that Wacha, as a starter, was able to contribute way more value to us at $6.2 million this year than Wandy will ever have the opportunity to do at 4.1 or 4.2 or whatever it ends up working out to. And just to kind of put a button on this before I toss it back to you, Craig, his projections from Zips, which is my favorite projection system, he's projected to be at or below replacement value the entire length of his contract. So that's because he's a walk guy. He's a guy who walks a lot of guys and strikes out kind of a whatever amount of people. So could he benefit from playing in Petco Park? Sure. Like, could the results that we see on paper of his ERA, which as it was last year, be much lower than the kind of what his peripherals suggest they should be because of the fact he plays in Petco Park? Sure. But also they might not be. And then we're kind of stuck holding the bag for this guy. So I hope that's not too pessimistic, but I'm just trying to provide kind of a more holistic approach to it, Craig.
Very much understand. The reason I'm not Michael Wilboning it here, all right? But I don't usually look at projections because I don't find them helpful in that they're always based on what happened before. And then the nature of projections is, he's 33, so we're going to take a little bit off the top of everything he did because he must be getting worse because he's a year older. And that's why, when Manny's contract came out and they did the steamer projection, every year it has him hitting for a slightly lesser average and hitting a couple fewer homers and getting a couple fewer walks and striking out a couple more times, and he just incrementally decreases 5% every year of his career. And we all know that will not be the case. We all know that Manny is going to have a great year at some point. It could be this year. It could be next year. But he's going to have a year that blows those projections out of the water. And then they're going to redo the projections off of that year. And they're going to incrementally drop it 5%, 5%, 5%. And if Wandy Peralta hadn't walked guys, his Zips projections would be so much better. But he did walk guys. So you knew coming in kind of what his Zips projection would be because you could just look at what he did, the last 3 years. Now, am I saying that the numbers are wrong and the projections are wrong? No, I'm not saying that. Wandy Peralta could be dead average. Also, I think he is in a much better situation. He was pitching in the NL or in the AL East. He's pitching sometimes in Boston at Fenway Park. He's pitching at Yankee Stadium. He's pitching at Rogers Center. Pitching at some of the best offensive parks in all of Major League Baseball against some of the heaviest lineups in all of Major League Baseball. He's pitching against the Orioles. I mean, and now you're in the NL West. Now, sure, the Dodgers have the best lineup of them all, but you've got areas of attack on all of these teams. Whether you're thinking about Corbin Carroll or Charlie Blackmon or Jung-Hoo Lee or, of course, all of the top lefties in the LA order, you've just got a need. And here's where I will sound a little old school, but I'm sure that Zips has a better projection for Yuki Matsui than it does for Wandy Peralta. But if I'm Mike Shildt and it's game 1 and it's the 7th inning and the Padres are up 4-3 and there's 2 on for Freddie Freeman with 2 outs, I don't know if I'm ready to turn to a guy who hasn't thrown a pitch in baseball, in Major League Baseball before, in that big spot. Wandy Peralta, got to have them veterans coming off the bench, as my predecessor liked to say. I think having somebody who's been there, done that in the toughest circumstances, in the toughest market, I think there's value to that for San Diego. And more than anything, for Mike Shildt, I want him to have an option to run a great bullpen. And now you've got a bullpen that I think is going to have some depth, some versatility, and 2 left-handers was just not going to cut it. Last point on this, because it's going to build out to the rest of the things we're going to talk about in this episode. Padres are ballers on a budget, my friend. They are damn straight determined to stay under the collective bargaining tax threshold this season. They probably are going to stay $4 or $5 million under the collective bargaining tax threshold. And the price of a fucking terrible starting pitcher in baseball is $14 million this year. The worst pitcher in the league got $12 million this year. Luis Severino got $13 million. Even Lance Lynn got $10 million this year. So the idea that the Padres could build out their staff by just buying a 4th starter, it's completely impossible. It's completely impossible. They can't do it unless they can get someone to defer 3/4 of their money or something. So if you can't do that, making a solid bullpen that gives your manager options, I really like that. I think from a pure value standpoint, getting another solid left-handed reliever was one of the few places where something like a $4 million purchase could legitimately impact the team's fortunes this year.
Yeah. I think that I agree with everything you're saying, except for I think maybe the thing you were talking about if it's game 1 on the Korea series. Not because I wouldn't put in Matsui, but just because I think it's dangerous to think of regular season games in that playoff setting. If we're talking in the playoffs, that's different. But I think that game obviously is going to have a lot more kind of luster around it. But at the same time, it is nothing but a regular season game at the end of the day. And I'm thinking about why this signing benefits us potentially is kind of like what you were saying. We have 3 lefties to turn to instead of 2, and that's going to matter over the course of the year as we get wear and tear and different options, et cetera, et cetera. My one other reason for pessimism, and this is pure speculation, but I just noticed in the Discord, a lot of people were saying, well, just wait until Niebla gets his hands on him. Just wait until Ruben Niebla is going to take him and he's going to turn him into a wizard and all this stuff. And I have the same feeling around that I had when we traded for Michael King and Johnny Brito and Randy Vasquez and all these other guys, which is that the Yankees, I think, are like a top 3 pitching organization. They are considered to be one of the most foremost pitching organizations in what Matt Blake has done over there to kind of transform their system. And you can see it in Wandy Peralta. Peralta was coming from the Giants in 2021, got traded to the Yankees, I think for Mike Tauchman, which did not work out for the Giants. And you can see just in terms of his pitch usage, how Wandy Peralta changed, because Wandy was someone who was throwing a lot of sliders when he was with the Giants, and that kind of went away. And he went from being a slider first reliever to being a changeup first reliever, to the point that he was throwing his changeup 44.5% of the time. And also he moved away from a fastball and went to a sinker. And that's why he's got that high ground ball rate, is because, and that's what the Yankees do, by the way. Michael King, great sinker. Wandy Peralta, the same way, he was throwing the sinker a lot. What I'm curious about is if there's anything that Ruben Niebla can do, and anything that we've seen, is that Ruben Niebla is great at working sliders into guys. And Wandy Peralta already has one, and I'm wondering if that's going to be a focus point for Ruben Niebla. That obviously gives me a little bit of injury concern. You're gonna, if you're throwing the slider more, coming from a sinker changeup first guy, that's going to be more torque on the elbow. That does concern me a little bit. But I think we've seen definitely some success in the past with you don't have to look at anyone past Tom Cosgrove to like the Tom Cosgrove and his doggy door slider is like fantastic. I think at the very least, aside from this giving us something to talk about for 20 minutes, this is an interesting signing. And it's something that, like you said, Craig, gives the Padres more options. And really, when we're balling on a budget, like, that is just what we need. We need optionality. We need depth. We need to make sure that, we're not setting up a house of cards, which, and we'll talk about this maybe now, maybe a little bit later in the episode, but there are some holes to fill on this team. And right now it does look like a house of cards.
Yeah. I'm not going to pull up his Savant page right now because I'm using my wife's power adapter for my laptop. I think I left mine in the studio this morning. And so I'm on low power, and every time I touch anything, I'm afraid the computer's going to break. But I do remember that he had a good slider for his fastball, a good slider for his change, and a bad slider for his breaking ball on the Savant page today. So if Niebla can get that slider cooking to be a positive pitch, maybe it does in some way fundamentally alter Peralta's ability to attack hitters, and maybe does give him, something more to rely upon to make him a more dangerous weapon coming out of the bullpen. If he's terrible, the Padres will be on the hook for him. If he blows his arm out on April 1st, the Padres will be on the hook for this deal. And I guess the last thing I would talk about as a discussion topic is AJ's like the only guy in baseball doing this. And I think he's doing it because he has to, not because he wants to. And I don't think he wants to give players, 50 opt-outs. But it's just got a Vegas gambler on a bit of a heater feel to me, that like, hey, I did this with Martinez, it worked out. Then I did a second one with Martinez, that worked out. I did it with Waka, it worked out. I did it with Lugo, it worked out. And I just feel like AJ Preller, in all of these deals, what he's really betting on, it's not as much the pitcher's health, it's his ability as a scout of talent to say, I've picked the right pitcher, I've picked the right guy, he is going to succeed. And because he succeeds, he is going to opt out. But I'm not going to be on the hook for these past years because I know what I'm doing. I've picked the right guy, and it's going to work. And one of these times, it's not going to work. And I hope it's not a big blow up for the San Diego Padres. But someday, as we keep giving out these, it's a 4-year deal, but it's 4 1-year deals. One of these days, somebody's going to get hurt, and we're going to be on the hook for the dead money. The difference is it's, a third of a Hosmer if Peralta is the guy who's out. So baller on a budget, left-hander, somebody that might be able to strike out Shohei. I'm down for all of those things. Kevin Acee did an interview with the shop across the street, speaking on radio terms earlier this afternoon, and mentioned a couple things about a former Padre that's a free agent outfielder, going to be 36 years old this year. One Thomas Pham, Pham-tastic. Tommy Pham expressing some interest in the Padres, and the Padres expressing some interest in him. Am I going to try? Yeah, I'm going to try. I'm going to risk it. Okay, yeah, I think I've gained enough. Then, as soon as that came out, my radio compatriot and co-host, Annie Heilbrunn, sent a tweet. She had already left the studio at that point to go to San Diego Sports Association. I'm like, why couldn't you say this while you were here, Eddie? But she sent a tweet and said this: Tommy Pham is very close with Mike Schilt. Pham also told me the Padres were interested in him at the trade deadline last season, among other teams, including the Diamondbacks. He maintains a good relationship with Preller. And then she later said, I should clarify, this doesn't mean Pham is coming to San Diego, just that if the Padres are still interested and things line up, Pham would be open to it. So, okay, let's take a minute If Tommy Pham comes back to San Diego, how do you feel about that?
I'm whelmed. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not underwhelmed. I'm whelmed. Obviously, like, show me the money. Like, that's going to determine everything. Like, if he's taking a discount deal or what we might consider to be a bargain deal, then that's obviously going to change my perspective on it. Um, you know, I think every team in baseball should have like one designated psycho, and I think that like it would be good to have our guy back. I can think of nothing that will strike fear into the hearts of Arizona Diamondbacks and Jock Peterson than Tommy Pham being right back across from him. Like, also Pham, someone who slays against his former teams, and now he's played against the Diamondbacks. He's gonna be reunited theoretically with Mike Schilt in this situation. He would do well against the Cardinals. He'd do well against the Rays if we play them. Which I guess we do now because of the balanced schedule. So those are all things to theoretically look forward to. He would do well against the Mets, and I did want to bring this up because I had completely forgotten that he was on the Mets last year. Like, I just completely slipped my mind that he was on the Mets, and I was looking through his stats. And I was like, wait, Tommy Pham was good on the Mets last year. Like actually, like his slash line was 268, 348, 472. Yeah. He had a 125 WRC plus for the Mets last year, the terrible Mets. And so, like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of unanswered questions in terms of, like, did Tommy Pham have beef with Ha-Sung Kim? Did he really just have beef with Bobby Dickerson? Like, if anything, like, I'm not worried about Tommy Pham in terms of his on-field things. It's more like, what's the vibe going to be when he gets here? And Kevin Acee was effusive that guys in the clubhouse love Tommy Pham. So I just have to take his word for it. I have nothing else to go off of. That is by far and away more my concern, because I don't think that Tommy Pham is going to be dreadful if he comes here, and I don't think that he's going to be amazing. I think he's going to be serviceable, but the knock-on effects of having Tommy here are what I'm concerned about. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think San Diego Padres fans have been very unfair to Tommy Pham, and I think I've personally been unfair to Tommy Pham at various points over the last couple of years. I think everyone took the Pacers incident and ran with it, and we've made every possible joke at Tommy Pham's expense. I'm not just saying this because he could have been potentially be a Padre again, and maybe, I don't know, in my new capacity, see me at some point and glare at me with those really mean glare eyes. But like, there's literally nothing wrong with visiting a gentleman's club or establishment. They're completely legal. They're everywhere. If you want to moralize or pontificate about that, like, fine. But no one deserves to get stabbed in the parking lot of a gentleman's club. And it is not part and parcel with going to a gentleman's club that you are exposing yourself to getting stabbed, potentially. That's not how it goes. Okay? It's not like, come for the lap dance, stay for the potential stabbing. That's not how it works. So it was a deeply unfortunate situation. It was one that, according to the police report of the San Diego police, Tommy Pham had nothing to do with it. He was literally in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was stabbed horribly. The fact that he is such a stud and in such good shape is partially what is kept him alive to this day. It was a horrible incident. And yeah, he didn't hit well for the Padres the 2 years he was here. He broke his hamate bone the first year. The second year, he was just frankly not very good. And since then, Padres fans have ridden him every time he's come to town. They've been really shitty to Tommy Pham, which is why when I heard that he'd be interested in coming back, I was like, really? Like, that's surprising. So just on one kind of basic, not baseball analytics level, I'd like to see it almost just for the healing cycle of him being here and hopefully being himself and having a chance to have a second act in San Diego where he can show what he is as a player and show that ability to bring a little power, little speed, a lot of bite, a lot of intensity, a lot of hustle, decent stick, average to below average fielder. We know this, but, compared to the literal empty hole in left field that we have currently occupied by like a AAA cast off, I'm fine with Tommy Pham. He got paid $6 million each the last 2 years. He's a year older. Is he really going to get a big raise off $6 million? At a price like that, Pham's okay to me. I mean, I'd rather have Tommy Pham than Raimel Tapia, right? I'd rather have Tommy Pham than Profar, maybe.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, again, it's like if they're gonna put Pham in left, Tatis in right, a Zokar
Something in center. I don't know
field,
who's
a
in center.
Zokar, like I don't know. I mean, another thing, and again, it's like it's really difficult to listen to some of these interviews, like when there's just so much uncertainty around this team, and like they're asking Kevin Acee like, well, is this gonna happen? He's like, well, this might happen, but I don't know, and like that's kind of the tenor the whole time, because like what else is he supposed to say? But one of the things he did say was like, I would not be surprised to see Jose Azocar getting significant time on the Padres this year, and that doesn't, it's not a
Doesn't
super
get me
sexy
excited
sentence,
at all.
but
Doesn't even, it pins my skirt down and is never mind lifted. Bobby pins it to my leg.
I mean, Jose Azocar as a fourth outfielder, I'm like kind of okay with. You know what I mean? But him getting significant time, not very exciting. But like, let's just go with what Kevin was saying for the sake of argument. A Pham, a Zokar, Tatis outfield. Like again, not like striking fear into the heart of opponents. But the nice part about having Tatis be so good is that he does kind of spread the suck around in a way. And like, if you have Pham come in and he's a league average bat, like, and he's playing left field, like, even though you really need that left fielder to be providing surplus value, like that's why you put the sluggers there. Like, it's not going to sink the team. So long as everyone shows up and does their job. The question for me becomes like, kind of just how bad is the hole going to be in center field, and that's kind of more what I'm curious about.
The Padres are not going to have a winning season if Jose Azocar gets 350 plate appearances or more. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe if literally everything else maxes out, if we're getting 100% out of all of our superstars and everyone stays healthy on the pitching staff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, maybe. But Jose Azocar has had 318 plate appearances in 2 years, and he's put up a 292 on base percentage. I mean, this guy is not a stick in any way, shape, or form. He's not even a great speed player. I'm not sure exactly what he does well. Nothing. I mean, he's a guy. He's a below replacement level or replacement level outfielder that is on our team because he's on our team. Like, you could pick anybody out of the brush and he could probably do as well or better than Jose Azocar. Now, is there another level to Jose Azocar? Okay. He's 28. This isn't a young gun out there. Jose Azocar's 28 years old. I mean, Eric Owens can show up and maybe do something for you from 20 years back in the hot tub time machine. I don't know, man. I don't like that stuff at all. Also, I don't think it's right. I truly, truly believe the Padres will trade for an outfielder, for a left-handed batting outfielder that can play center field. I really believe that. Either that or a left-handed outfielder that can play right field, and then they commit to a full-time Fernando Tatis Jr. center field experiment. I think one of those two things is going to happen. I do not think that we're just going to ride Jose Azocar into the sunset.
I have to say, and this is slightly not off topic, but I was shocked when Joey Gallo signed for $5 million with the Nationals, and that wasn't something that AJ Preller was interested in. There's the Rangers connection. There's his guy. He's a left-hander. He's like the type of player that he defensively can absolutely play, if not right field. I mean, he's certainly left field. And he's the type of player that you hate watch hitting, but he has value at certain points. So when that happened, like, it did really make me question, like, okay, how much money do we actually have to spend? Like, if Joey Gallo is coming off the board at $5 million and they're not competitive for that, going to a bad team, like, I actually don't know. So I don't know, maybe that can sort of help transition us to our next topic. But I don't know. I agree with you that something is going to happen. I don't think that AJ Preller is he doesn't have the constitution to get to opening day without making a trade. So I think something is coming. But it's just kind of where and
All right,
when.
so let's try and just put some puzzle pieces together here. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I'm doing like literally every day on the radio, right? Just trying to imagine stuff, take some pieces, push them around in the box. Does this fit? Can we stay inside the box? If we agree, and Jason R. Martinez on Fangraphs put out, an update on the Padres' attack of the CBT and said essentially, if you give a little room for the deadline and for the chance to make some sort of incremental improvement as the season goes on, then instead of being $22 million to the number, you're probably around $18 million to the number where the Padres would have to pull up stakes and stop spending on their payroll this year. Remember, every minor leaguer that you bring up is still $750,000 against your CBT. So it's not like all those kids are free. So let's say, for the purpose of the thought experiment in the podcast, that we have 18 million average annual value, right? Understanding that doing kooky AJ opt-out deals helps tweak this stuff, or maybe we're going to sign Blake Snell to a 60-year contract, and massage out his average annual value when we're paying him when he's 91 years old. But if you have $18 million, we have right now one outfielder and the mighty Jose Azocar. We have right now no DH. We have Jake Cronenworth as our first baseman. And as mentioned, we've got a 4-5 starting spot of iffy and scratchy right now. Not itchy and scratchy, iffy and scratchy as our two fourth and fifth starters. So how would you try and use this money to upgrade this roster?
It's a great question. So, we're going to need a left-handed bat. I mean, that's just, there's no two ways about it. I'm in a fantasy baseball group, and I have some friends in there, and people are kind of getting a little horny for Jorge Soler, which I would love to. In a vacuum, would I like to have Jorge Soler hitting for my team? Sure. But we don't need another righty bat, and we certainly don't need Jorge Soler playing in the outfield. Or if you thought Juan Soto was a bad outfielder, you don't want Jorge Soler in the outfield. So looking at kind of who our options are left on the free agent market, I mean, it's pretty clear we're out of the Cody Bellinger price range. I think, certainly if we only have $18 million to play with this year, like we're not paying Cody Bellinger. Michael Brantley retired, so he is not available. So you've got someone like Eddie Rosario. You have your Jesse Winkers out there. You have your David Peraltas, who I think is actually like a kind of an interesting, like, the lefty Pham, so to speak, where it's like maybe there's some juice left in the tank. You're kind of looking at a similar price range. They literally have like the same exact market value estimation on Spotrac. So that's something to think about. You have Austin Meadows out there. And that's kind of it in terms of like intriguing people. So you're going to have to spend, I think, at least some free agent money. And also, by the way, I should say, in terms of potential center fielders, you have Michael Taylor out there, and he's a righty. But my question is, are you going to spend the money on the lefty side of things, and or are you going to spend it on the center fielder side of things? So I think if you're going to spend it on the lefty side of things, I would be not excited, but intrigued by David Peralta. He at least provides some sort of counter and balance to this lineup that we're not going to get from someone else. And I think at this point in the offseason, you might be able to get him for like a $6 million. He's older. He's 36 years old. But if we're having to spread this across getting some other, exciting outfield options or starting pitching options, like that's kind of what I think you're left with. In terms of the outfield, are you spending any money there, Craig?
Yeah, I think you have to. I think you have to trade for one outfielder and sign another. I think that's how it has to go. So the way I'm going to do it now, the name I had talked about before was Max Kepler, because I think he is one of the only quote unquote available, although just yesterday the Twins made a trade with Seattle to send Jorge Polanco out to the Mariners. And I read some reports today that the Mariners were interested in Kepler in a bigger deal, and the Twins were not interested in doing that. So probably Max Kepler isn't even available, but a guy like that would at least be able to maybe fit in between some of your big right-handed batters in the lineup and actually balance the lineup a little bit. But now I'm believing that's a pipe dream. So maybe you're trading instead, like we talked about on Monday's show, for Trevor Larnach or someone like that from Minnesota, another left-handed guy that you're kind of taking a little bit of a flyer on, that he's got the on-base skills to get somewhere. Then you're probably adding someone from that Rosario, Peralta, Profar class of a free agent outfielder that at least bats left or switch. And then the other guy I'd be interested in, and I've brought him up multiple times, is Carlos Sweet Music Santana. Because I think a switch hitter that could play first base or be your DH, regular on base skills, solid 20 to 30 home run hitter pretty much every year, went over 30 bombs last year, slotting in toward the bottom of your order, really lengthens the Padres lineup. And of course, we remember so many times last year, Raphie, where the bottom of the lineup was Nola and Grisham, and it was just a complete sucking void. Carpenter, Nola, Grisham, Cruz, Nola, Grisham, and it was just 7, 8, 9 was just out. And instead, if you get to a situation where you've got a little less floppy bottom of the lineup, I think you've got a better chance to be a more consistent offensive team. So I'd like to, and when I say that, Rafe, I'm not buying another starting pitcher. I'm buying 3 bats, either trading for and buying two, trading for 1 bat, buying 2 others. But I'm using that $18 million to build my offense, and I'm basically living in the bed that I made of trading Soto for a bunch of pitchers. I've got young pitchers on the come, and being a team that is devoted to using the 4th and 5th slots in a Tampa Bay Rays style. 4-inning outings, piggyback outings, and mid-season jumping maybe to a Drew Thorpe or a Jairo Uriarte or a Ryan Bergert or an Adam Mazer. There's lots of guys on the come for San Diego. They're not just ready to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, on the pitching side of things, there are really only a couple names that intrigue me, and these are just people who are going to come in at somewhat of a value and provide like just a little bit of depth, in a 4 spot or a 5 spot. So that's going to be Hyunjin Ryu, who I think, it'd be nice to have, another Korean player on the team who can kind of, create this little like nice block that I just like love from a team chemistry standpoint. Like, I think that would be quite cool. I also think he's someone who's like not going to be terrible. Not going to be amazing. Like, he's like going to be a classic, like 4 or 5 starter at the end of his career. He's 36 years old. Current projection is somewhere around $8-9 million. The other person who the Padres have been linked to is Michael Lorenzen. I don't know that Michael Lorenzen, he had kind of an interesting year last year where, if you remember, he was really, really, really good. And then he threw, this is, I think 2 years ago.
Last year he threw the no-hitter and he fell apart.
When he threw the no-hitter,
Philadelphia,
right?
Yeah, he was traded to Philly. He pitched well, then he threw a no-hitter, and then he was just god-awful the rest of the year.
Yeah, so just to kind of break down his stat lines, he threw 105 and 2/3 innings in Detroit, and during that time, he put up a 3.58 ERA. Like, great, amazing, like absolutely. He goes to Philly, he throws a no-hitter right away, he throws another 40 or so innings, and in that time, he puts up a 5.51 ERA. So I really think that there was something about that mojo with the no-hitter. Maybe he was exhausted, he was tired, it was a Johan Santana situation, like where he just kind of completely kind of fell apart after that. I know that the estimates from Lorenzen are somewhere in the $9 million range. Again, that's in this hypothetical situation, that's blowing half our wad on Michael Lorenzen. And then it's like, okay, what are you going to do for the rest of it? I would agree with you if we're spending that $18 million on building a left-handed offense. Like, I can absolutely buy into that. I think someone who would cost the Padres no money, you could sign to potentially a minor league deal and then cut, and it would be, nothing, is Eric Lauer. I would bring him back. He's a lefty who, remember, he went to the Milwaukee and he wasn't bad. Milwaukee's a pretty decent pitching organization. 21, he had a 1.7 WAR year, hit 3.19 ERA on 118 innings. 2022, he put up 158 and a 2/3 innings and put up a 3.69 ERA. Like, again, these are really solid numbers. And then last year, he just had a flat out terrible year. I think he was injured. He only threw 46 and 2/3 of an innings. He had a 6.5 ERA. And I guess the question is, do you think Eric Lauer, who, by the way, is only 28 years old, like, still has another year, another two, where you can get something serviceable out of him? Like, maybe you only get like 70, 80 innings of like 4.3, 4.4 ERA baseball from him. But you take that. Like, I think that this is a team where we got to get 900 innings from starting pitching somewhere, and I don't see where it is now. And so, if I'm just thinking about like how I'm going to spend economically, of course, there's also the reunion element of it. There's also the Niebla element of it. Like, what can this guy do? When he's, meets some Niebla magic. So I tend to agree with you that I would prioritize the offensive side of things over the over the pitching side of things in terms of money. But Eric Lauer, someone who I'm a little bit intrigued by.
If we weren't trying to live in the Cut-Spenda era and, play everything for value, I'd be out here stumping to re-sign Blake Snell. Just plain and simple. Come up with a creative deal to sign Blake Snell. I spent a segment on the radio today trying to think of a creative deal to sign Blake Snell now. And like, what if the market completely collapses on Blake? What if he doesn't get within 60 miles of what he wants? And what if the teams that are chasing him are teams he's not that intrigued in going to? And could you come up with some weird deal that is 4 years, $50 million, but 40 of it's in the first year, and then there's an opt-out, and so obviously, he's getting paid like a major market rate for 1 year, and then it's a prove it deal and get back out there. But if you get hurt, a la the AJ Preller magic of all the opt-out deals, then hey, you get this money, you get this guaranteed money. I don't think he'll do that. I don't think he's going to have to do that. I think the market will find him a home probably in the next couple of weeks. But to really make the team better, you would get a starter that would slot above Michael King, and that would make Michael King the fourth starter. And that would be a pretty darn good rotation. Chance to be a great rotation. But as it is, King, who I think on a Effectively Wild podcast they gave an F injury grade to, is a guy that may not make 100 innings this year. It's a lot more worrisome, because there's no question about it. The plan that I'm sketching out here, Raphie, I think I said it before, it requires almost 100% perfect health record for the Padres to have a chance to contend this year, or for them to make some move in the middle of the season, or for their young starters to really come up and just do a bang up job and make us all forget about all these other starters. I mean, they could really use another 150 quality innings in the rotation. I just don't see anywhere they can find it at the price.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that goes back to the Peralta signing that we started with and talking about, where it might not be the most amazing, sexy thing, but it just means that we're going to have at least big leaguers out there, and not just guys who are shuttling back and forth from El Paso to be soaking up innings and praying and hoping for the best. So I don't know, and this again maybe transitions us to our final topic, but like, we don't have as much time to look at some of these guys.
No, we really don't.
Year. And I'm curious how that's going to affect
this is something that is really at top of mind for me right now, and I hope it's not concern trolly, but I think it's really something important for Padres fans to keep in mind, because one of the things that happened last year was that we had a built-in excuse in spring training when everyone showed up, hung out for about 7 days, and then scattered to the four corners of the baseball universe to play the World Baseball Classic. Yu Darvish never was in camp, winds up throwing just, a handful of innings for Team Japan, and then comes back and he's not ready for the start of the year. All these other guys are here, there, and everywhere, and our team developed zero chemistry and then really showed zero chemistry for a good portion of 2023. And we said, well, we can't wait till next year when we have a full spring training and everything will be so much better. Point of fact, we've got a more truncated spring training than a year ago. The Padres will play 20 Cactus League games before they pull up stakes and go to Korea. They will lose 6 days in between their last spring training game and their first regular season game. They, of course, have to play a regular season game 11 days before anyone else does against the Dodgers, not for nothing, 2 of them. And then it's another 3 days to come back from Korea. They'll play a couple of exhibitions against the Mariners at Petco Park, which is so weird because they'll actually have a big league record at that point. They'll be somewhere between 2-0 and 0-2 playing exhibition games. And then they start the season. There are fewer days together inside Peoria Sports Complex this year than last year. And the last real spring training that the Padres had, Raphie, was 2019. Because, of course, 20, COVID, 21, COVID-related, 22, WBC, 2023, Korea. In 2019, the Padres played 33 Cactus League games. This year, they're playing 20. So all the talk about, well, Jacob Marcy and Graham Pauley and Ethan Salas, et cetera, all these kids are going to be given a real long look in spring training. Really? Will they? Because you have to have a big league team ready to play opening day 11 days earlier than everyone else. Can you really afford to go like, oh, yeah, we're going to have the starters get 1 at bat, 2 at bats. We're going to lay them out because we're going to take a long look at Graham Pauley and Jacob Marcy, and we're going to take a long look at Mortarella and all these other kids. How can you possibly do that and be ready for the regular season? I think that's eyewash. I really do. I think the long look they're going to get is on the backfields in B-League games because Mike Schilt, this is his first team, and it's not even a team yet. Padres now with Wandy Peralta will have 36 guys on their 40-man roster. And they whatever they get this thing together, it's literally going to be 3 weeks and then it's time to go to Korea.
I think with World Baseball Classic last year, even though there's debatable, we had the most play. I think we had the most players. Chris is the one who did the research on this. We had the most players of any team or tied for the most who went to go play in the World Baseball Classic. And you could say that maybe screwed up some of our major league guys. They didn't have the pitch clock. Do you remember that narrative? They didn't have the pitch clock, so they couldn't get ready and blah, 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 blah. But I will say the rest of the squad was still playing spring training games. And so our minor league guys, they actually got the benefit of being there and being able to participate in those games. And I think now it's going to kind of be the opposite where we only have these 20 games. We got to get the big league guys in shape. And so it's the minor league guys who are going to suffer at a time when the Padres seemingly as an organization are transitioning from being a star-driven, we're signing guys, we're trading for guys, we're sending prospects away to, hey, 25 and 26, we want to be a balanced team that's really prospect forward. Well, this is the most valuable time of the year for those guys, and we're just going to get it. And I mean, I don't know if you can hear that, Craig, but I can hear it. It's the narrative that's being spun after the Padres get off to a 3-7 start, and they're sold, oh, well, they're sluggish from Korea. They had all that travel. They were playing games against, the KBO teams and exhibitions and it's just the travel. I can feel it already in my bones that narrative is coming. And I just think it's important to keep it centered that last year it was World Baseball Classic. This year it's Korea. At some point it's just the team. And I just want to remember that as one of us invariably come April 7th is coming on this show and being like, well, guys, they're jet lagged. It's fine. We called this. We knew it.
No, they're set up for a tough start. They are really set up for a tough start. to go to Korea with an incomplete team to face Yamamoto and Buehler, I assume, or Yamamoto and Glass now, and then to come home, maybe sitting on an 0-2, stew on that for a week, and then jump into the regular season. Nah, it's just a bummer to me that I would love for Mike Shildt to have the full, here it is, my house, my culture, get it set, steady as they go. And it's not going to be that way for the Padres. It's going to be helter-skelter. It's going to be chaotic. That's been Preller's tenure anyway, but it's going to be that way again this spring. And it's going to be something the Padres are going to have to fight over, and get past if they're going to have a good year this year. I think we need to sign some outfielders and a DH and get that team together, and then I'll feel so much better about our chances to survive a truncated spring training, Raphie.
Until then, I think AJ Preller has seen his shadow, so unfortunately that means 6 more weeks of dormancy. So I hope you enjoyed the Wandy Peralta sighting because it's the last that we're going to get.
Cool. Great. Well, we'll be back to tell you about good and bad players from 2000s Padres on next week's show. But until then, for Raphie, for Chris and Absentia, I'm Craig. Thanks so much for listening, as always, and go Padres.